Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here. My name is Elizabeth Jones, and I am Chief Program Officer at the Welcoming Center, which is a nonprofit in Philadelphia. And I'm joined by my colleague, Andrew Nguyen, who's the Senior Director of Workforce Readiness. And we are going to talk today about some of the issues that immigrants face in entering the workforce and that employers face in hiring immigrants and finding immigrant talent, and then move on from there, look at some possible solutions. Um, Next slide. Just a brief introduction about us. The Welcoming Center was founded in 2003 by Anne O'Callaghan, who was an immigrant from Ireland, and she herself experienced barriers integrating into her career as an experienced physical therapist. She started the Welcoming Center to provide others with resources to more quickly access paths to upward economic and social integration. We currently serve the Philadelphia region and have been exploring expansion into other parts of Pennsylvania's suburban and rural communities. Next slide, please. Our work focuses on training and community building with immigrants who are seeking support for small business development, employment, upskilling in language and digital skills, and in becoming more civically engaged leaders. Our language classes are contextualized to help participants move more quickly into upward economic mobility by narrowly focusing on the language they need for the certain goals that they have. Many of our participants start on a pathway of training programs as they reach their immediate goals and find stability, and then move on to more longer term goals. For example, a person might start out in an English class geared towards finding a job and then work towards a long-term goal of opening their own business. Next slide, please. Thank you. So one of the reasons that we see some of the workforce gaps is that population change has been occurring all over the country. And that is attributed to two factors: natural population change, which is births and deaths, and migration patterns in and out of the state. And based on US Census Bureau estimates, Pennsylvania's natural population change continues to be negative. Between 2020 and 2024, Pennsylvania had a little over 500,000 births compared to a little over 600,000 deaths, resulting in a natural population change of negative 77,000. However, population change due to migration was positive. So in total, Pennsylvania netted about 150 new residents between 2020 and 2024. And this growth is completely through in-migration, and it is attributable to international migration because net domestic migration was negative. People are not moving from other states into Pennsylvania. It's international migration that was positive. Next slide, please. So why is immigrant integration important to the economic well-being of Pennsylvania? Without this international migration, the state would have seen significant population losses in the past 2 years alone, with twice as many immigrants moving into Pennsylvania as native-born people who are moving out. And without a strong population base, economies begin to see gaps in labor forces, which we know we're seeing in some areas of Pennsylvania. Loss of production, loss of services, and a strain on systems of public goods such as healthcare and transportation. Next, please. So the localized impact of international migration can be even more significant. The pandemic losses of population in Philadelphia would have been even greater but for the immigrants from other countries. And in 2024, the trend in population loss was finally reversed thanks to foreign-born people moving in. Combined, the rise in immigration and the drop in residents leaving the city allowed Philadelphia to add nearly 6,000 residents in 2024 among all movers. The projections for the next 25 years show the importance of continuing to attract people to move to Pennsylvania. With the current trends, we know that international migration is the single most impactful way to increase population, and population growth is largely driven by urban counties in the southeast of the state, consistent with the demographic trends of the past few decades. Next, please. So what is the current picture of immigrants in Pennsylvania? They represent almost 8% of the total population. In Philadelphia, they're almost 15%. They're concentrated in several mostly urban areas. They are mostly working age, and almost half have a college degree, which means they can fill a wide variety of jobs at all skill levels and all education levels. There are almost 67,000 immigrant entrepreneurs in Pennsylvania as well, which represents increased services and products for local economies, and entrepreneurs themselves are also job creators. The Pennsylvania labor market is similar to the overall market in the country, where there are still more open jobs than there are people to fill them. And the forecasts show that without immigration, the US workforce will be in full decline in about 10 years.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Again, my name is Andrew Nguyen. I'm the Senior Director of Work Readiness. So, as Elizabeth explained, at the same time that immigrants are increasingly making up a greater percentage of the working population, and in fact, Pennsylvania and the US overall is really requiring immigrants to make up the workforce needs, we're seeing a significant rate of brain waste. Brain waste refers to highly skilled or educated individuals, such as immigrants, who are unable to fully utilize their skills in the workplace, typically due to barriers such as credential recognition, language proficiency, bias, which leads to underemployment or unemployment. This underutilization not only harms the individuals and the job seekers, but also it represents a loss of human capital for employers and our local communities. You can see here some of the recent data points that illustrate why so many immigrants often end up stuck in jobs like rideshare, hospitality, or other service sector roles, not because that is their skill set or their education, but due to brain waste. Just one figure I'll highlight really is that the rate of immigrant college graduates who are working part-time involuntarily, these are folks who want to work full-time but are forced to work part-time, is double the rate of US born folks. Employers really have a dual incentive to recruit immigrant talent. There's an untapped talent pool out there, and because this is an increasing share of the workforce population that they need to figure out how to attract in order to stay competitive in the market. So when it comes to brain waste, these are some of the most barriers to immigrants integrating into the US workforce. It's likely no surprise. We're going to get into the solutions soon, but I do want to go over them briefly. By far, English language proficiency is the most significant barrier for immigrants. English classes in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, across the country, typically have very long wait lists and cannot meet the demand. More so, many English classes are geared towards two ends of the spectrum. They're either survival level, conversational English, or they are very rigorous academic level English intended for folks trying to get their GEDs or attend college. More English classes are needed generally, but especially those that are contextualized to meeting people's everyday life goals, such as employment. That's why the Welcoming Center, our ESL classes are geared specifically towards job search, workplace communication, digital skills. Another really significant barrier for integration in the workforce for immigrants is a lack of social capital and a lack of professional network. I've seen immigrants who, if there is an existing community within the city, they're able to find employment very quickly because they're able to integrate with others from their same native background. But I've also seen immigrants coming from countries where there isn't a significant population already in their new community, and they find it significantly more difficult to find work because, as we all know, networking is a significant component in finding employment and integrating into a career. Additionally, there's a lack of understanding when it comes to immigrants in terms of how to transfer their education and the experience to the US. This goes beyond understanding when and if it is useful to have their foreign degrees evaluated and recredentialed. The answer to that really varies, but also in many informal aspects. This includes understanding how to re-enter their careers in the US, what's the best entry point for that, and how to sell their experience and skill set for the US context. Just as important, though, is the unintentional but common unconscious bias that many hiring managers and staff have, where folks will overweigh and overvalue their concerns around foreign education and experience being somehow less than or lower quality than the US equivalent, and really underweighing the fresh perspectives and innovation that having staff with a different educational background, different work experience can bring in terms of offering more creativity. This also really ties into the last point, which is that immigrants are often expected to adapt to the cultural norms and practices of the US. Things that may seem obvious to native-born folks take time and education for folks to understand and adapt to. And workplaces often aren't attuned to kind of the differences in workplace cultures and how can they adapt both ways instead of just one way. I want to take a quick break and just ask the audience, for employers, what challenges are you facing when it comes to recruiting and retaining immigrant talent? And for other organizations, whether it's nonprofits or folks in the community that work with immigrant populations, what challenges do you see on your end in supporting immigrants find employment? You can either come off mute or put something in the chat.
This is Melanie from St. Joseph Center. I think one of our challenges is doing the educational equivalency and make sure we just had this with our child care center. So making sure that their degrees that they earned over there are equivalent to what's in the United States.
And Melanie, I'm curious to hear, what challenge are you seeing in terms of getting people getting their degrees recredentialed and evaluated here?
The cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can also take a pretty significant amount of time, especially due to the conditions maybe in their home country as well. And folks oftentimes don't have that much time, or employers don't to wait. Other barriers folks are hearing? Challenges?
I'll throw another one out and just say accurately completing the I-9s and making sure that they're appropriate.
Yeah. Yep. A lot of employers often come to us with the first question being, oh, do your immigrants need sponsorship from an employer, when many, many immigrants have work authorization and are not seeking sponsorship. I think a lot of employers aren't aware of that and assume that there's additional hurdles they have to go through.
There's a comment in the chat about. Oh, okay. You saw that. Did you see that? Yeah.
I wanted to say something also.
Mhm.
I also think that the point you said before about, the English classes that we need for them, it's a huge issue because, again, yes, we have like these smaller conversational courses that, they usually take. And they're really good about going to those, taking those, but that only lasts like a year and a half, and still doesn't bring them from 0 to 100. So they gain basic skills, but not enough to really move the needle when it comes to job placement or, you know what I mean, any other like moving up in their job ladder where they're at, right? So, or being able to like start working in their field of experience or in the field that they really went to school for in the native countries. So it still leaves them like in a limbo. So I right now host a ESL program in the community. I founded a nonprofit to serve the immigrant community, and that's our main, like one of our main issues. Because once we're done, they're like, okay, what's next? They want more. They want us to help them do more, but we can't. So that I would say that that's our greatest challenge right now.
Yeah, and here in Philadelphia, we're seeing the exact same issue, even though we're a larger city. A lot of the organizations serving immigrants from an ESL perspective or otherwise, it's all really like survival level focus and just quick and dirty, which is not just like a need from a compassion standpoint or humanitarian standpoint, but there's a lot of loss of like potential human capital and contributions to the local economy that we're just not capturing because we're not investing in these folks that do have education experience. Do also want to highlight Heather said that she teaches higher education. Greatest barrier is a lack of community to sustain immigrant faculty. We can hire faculty, but without a supportive larger community of fellow immigrants, they don't stay. Yep, that is hugely true. And a lot of statistics show that for local communities, there is an upfront cost in hosting and investing in immigrants, but long term, if they can retain folks and make it an attractive place to stay, the return on investment is significant. We'll go more into that in a little bit. I want to move it a little bit more into recruiting and how employers can recruit immigrant talent. And I'll try to also translate this since we have folks who work in higher ed or in nonprofits here. There's really three main pillars I want to touch on, but I want to emphasize that these strategies are largely applicable to being a more attractive employer to all types of period, not just immigrants. So the first thing I want to highlight is building talent pipelines with community partners. The Welcoming Center, we've supported over 2,300 immigrants in Philadelphia find employment. And the way that we and many, many other workforce organizations do so is by developing one-on-one referral pipelines out of our training programs, our workforce training programs, our ESL training pipelines, training programs with hiring managers at employers. And what we are able to offer and sell to employers are a vetted set of candidates who have gone through training and that we can do some pre-vetting on our end based upon their needs and what they're looking for candidates. What we found to be really important though with that on both ends is to build high quality one-on-one touch points where it's really clear for both sides who is the primary contact at the nonprofit or at the community organization that's going to be working through with the employer. And then on the vice versa, same thing on the employer end, who's going to be the primary contact so that there can be a building of a long-term relationship with both sides and opportunities to kind of evolve the relationship over time. That can lead to things such as what we've done with organizations like the Philadelphia Shipyard. There is a ton of public funding to invest in workforce that nonprofits can access and then build customized training programs with employers to meet their needs. What we've done with the shipyard basically is we found public workforce dollars, and we're able to meet the shipyard's needs. They are recruiting for thousands of positions over the coming years that they need to fill and are seeing the need to draw from the immigrant communities to meet those needs. We're working to build out customized ESL classes, contextualized to that workplace, and to support people to be able to pass the mechanical aptitude test that's required to become a welder or shipbuilder at the shipyard. There's tons of opportunities that exist out there on both ends to build these pipelines that can get people directly into better quality jobs out there. I also want to highlight the need to create a welcoming environment, whether that be in job postings, in your website, in the branding, to highlight that you welcome multicultural talent and perspectives. And I think as someone else mentioned earlier, there's a need for hiring managers to understand work authorization requirements and that there are many types of immigrants with different statuses that do not need sponsorship and already have their documents ready to go. There's also the opportunity to brainstorm creative solutions, oftentimes in partnership with community partners, to navigating language barriers. A common tactic that we've seen work really well is to hire around a shared language group and ensure there are supervisors and coworkers who can serve as informal interpreters. And once an employer is known to be welcoming to a specific population, word really spreads like wildfire, and it makes the jobs of the hiring and talent acquisition team become so much easier. We've also seen some organizations invest in on-site ESL classes, often offered after or before work or during lunch break. And we've seen this really improve retention rate as well, and seen much more longer tenured immigrant employees who have been promoted to the company. Also want to highlight that the truth of the matter is there's a lot of talented immigrants who are really stuck, as I mentioned earlier, in low wage jobs and are underemployed. These folks are desperate for any opportunity to have a doorway open for them. And so employers who are able to offer alternative paths to employment, such as internships, apprenticeships, and fellowships, can really get a leg up. We have piloted in the past a paid fellowship opportunity with the city of Philadelphia, where we would fill 3-month paid positions in different areas of municipal government with foreign born folks with college degrees. And we've seen the matriculation rate from this paid fellowship into full-time positions with city government be about 50%. So there's a lot of potential here to have lower risk opportunities to test out immigrant talent, but have it be mutually beneficial for both sides. And then the last thing is really implementing skill-based hiring. It's very popular nowadays. Really the thrust of it is to prioritize demonstrable skills over degrees or job titles, and just really reevaluating job postings and the language utilized to be more inclusive and not to box people out of opportunities before even getting to the interview stage.
So we want to give a couple of real life examples of how employers are attracting and retaining immigrants in their labor force and how they're actually integrating them in. There's a fantastic Wall Street Week video that highlights the piece on Cardinal Glass, and I can share out the link to that longer video. But Cardinal Glass is a glass manufacturer for residential windows, and they have one of their factories is located in Fargo, North Dakota. And the state of North Dakota recently created an office of legal immigration within their Commerce Department to address the severe worker shortage in that state, which is significantly worse than the Pennsylvania labor shortage. And employers and communities have responded really well to efforts in the state because they're aware of this labor force being in demographic fall. And out of Cardinal Glass's almost 400 workers, almost 70% of them are foreign born. And I can't understate how once jobs begin to be known about, it continues to be an attraction for other immigrants with either the same language group or from the same communities. And so it can be, the word of mouth is a big fuel for that attraction, but there are some very specific strategies that this company has put into place that have also made it a great place to work. workers can start with absolutely no experience and no English. But many of them already come with experience and skills from their countries. But what the strategy they utilize is having master trainers, and that's a huge important part of their recruitment and training because it means workers can start with very little English and they can still be trained in all aspects of skills, but also the safety component, which on a factory floor is a big concern, is taken care of because workers are definitively learning in their own language. And as they gain skills and are able to improve their English, in the work structure of the factory, there are multiple pathways to career growth and within the company. And so I'd be happy to share out this link to in the chat for further information, this as one example of an employer strategy.
I think Elizabeth gave a great point. And these are a few other strategies that employers can take. And really, they're just centered around addressing some of those barriers to integration that were laid out earlier. So to Elizabeth's point, offering language support, cannot emphasize the value enough in having schedules, especially if employees are scheduled by different blocks, to have it scheduled by language cohorts and be thoughtful about recruiting from specific language groups and how can you integrate folks with multilingual who are multilingual into all levels of the workforce. There's also an important, I think what we've seen a lot is as employers start to try to integrate more their immigrant employees, whether it's through these language cohorts or integrating ESL classes at the workplace, they're seeing that the need isn't really just language and cultural support for the immigrants, but also for supervisors and managers and figuring out how do we build in cross-cultural communication training for those managers as well so that they can adapt to working for and with a more global workforce. Because as we all know, a good supervisor or a bad supervisor is a big difference between retaining and staying at a job or leaving. Related to kind of fostering that integrated work environment is providing other opportunities that are structured for employees to feel valued and recognized. This can be mentorship programs, whether that's something similar more to the master trainer programs where you're providing technical training that's structured and intentional for immigrants, or more just informal mentorship programs because a lack of social capital is a significant barrier for immigrants. We found employee resource groups to be really helpful as well. This is something that's more common, I believe, with other populations, but you see this less so amongst immigrants. But workplaces that are intentional about having spaces for immigrant employees to discuss mutual issues and figure out how to address them through the company, we've seen greater retention in that way. So tailoring professional development. As we see employers have a greater share of immigrants in their workforce, we're seeing the need for more tailored approaches to professional development crop up. An example of this is a utility company here in Philadelphia that we worked with recently to pilot a leadership training program. They recognized that they had a lot of immigrant employees with management potential, but that their current set of professional development programming didn't address the needs of these employees and specific barriers that they had that were unique to their experiences as being immigrants. So they worked with the Welcoming Center to build out a customized leadership and communication training program that targeted those immigrants with leader potential. And it went really well. Many of those folks are now in more people supervision roles today, and we're working with that utility company to run a second cohort of immigrant leaders. What I'll note too is that with this utility company, they found it so wildly successful that now they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we integrate native born folks, particularly supervisors and managers, into this training because, like I mentioned earlier, to retain and promote immigrants, it's not just about integrating them into the workforce, but also figuring out how do we get everyone at a workplace to work together. Last thing I'll mention is just the importance of developing a system of metrics and evaluation tools just to track progress over time in terms of recruiting and retaining immigrant talent, particularly as this is frankly a field that many employers are still relatively new at. And while there are some tried and true formulas and strategies, it's pretty unique and tailored based upon the industry and the local communities because immigrants aren't a monolith and the needs can vary pretty wildly.
So we're going to take a minute to dig down into a case example of one of our participants that went through our International Professionals Program and the City Fellowship Program. This is the story of Berna. She came from Turkey in 2017, and she came here all alone without any connections at all. And she spent the first several years working in a marble company where she found some connections with other Turkish nationals, and she also drove rideshare. She worked about 60 to 70 hours a week, maybe making $2,000 a month, and her biggest concern was groceries and rent. She found IPP online and came and joined the program. She had a little bit of a rocky start because she had to go back and take care of a family member in Turkey. And she came back and rejoined the next cohort, repeated a lot of the same sessions that she had missed, and was really dedicated to finishing the program. At the end of the program, she had a resume that showed her procurement specialist experience of 6 years. She had been able to translate her degree in econometrics, which is what it's called in Turkey, into something that US-based employers would really understand and be able to relate to. And she interviewed for a fellowship with the procurement department at the city of Philadelphia. The picture on the left shows her giving a presentation to other fellows and employers of the project she worked on during the fellowship. So keep in mind that the fellowship paid $15 an hour at a full-time rate. So while she did the fellowship, it was a little bit of a risk, she told me, because she still had to drive Uber after work because $15 an hour wasn't enough. But she knew that it was going to get her US-based work on her resume. And then after the fellowship, she applied for a permanent position. She took a certification exam and became permanently employed with the city of Philadelphia, making $38,000 a year. This was a huge improvement to her and a great success. On this slide, we're going to look at how her success story did not end with her first job with the city. Her talent and drive were so quickly recognized. After 1 year, she was promoted. She made about $50,000 in the first promotion. She continued to work, learn, asked to go to conferences, volunteer, receiving merit-based raises, which doubled her entrance salary. These are all skills she learned about networking in the IPP program. She told me that this is not something that is common, or at least it doesn't look like this in Turkey, and that networking and building those relationships and the supportive community that she found in IPP is what made the biggest difference to keep her going, give her confidence. And in 2024, she used her network and was recruited by one of her former supervisors to work on a long-term project, revamping the entire procurement system for the city. She's now on the team that is taking the new system from research and design to testing and implementation. The trajectory of her career, she's now making $98,000 a year after several more promotions. if should she stay with the city, shows that she could retire with an income more than 11 times that of her gateway job. And these data show that the value of this small amount of intervention at the beginning of when a person first comes and first arrives can have a huge return in investment in than just salary alone. The added benefits is her stability, her increasing ability to contribute to the economy, the leaderships and skills she has brought to her field and what she's contributing to the city. She has solid benefits, retirement, healthcare, and things like that. And another benefit, in 2022, she became a citizen, and in 2023, she got married, is planning on, working towards purchasing a home, all representative of her contributions to the economy. So, what was exactly that initial investment? In the International Professionals Program, the program represents about a $6,000 initial per person investment, which is, as Andrew stated previously, funded by the Philadelphia Workforce Board. Her tax contributions and salary alone show an ROI of over $1,000 to the dollar per every dollar. And over a 40-year career, her salary driving rideshare would have amounted to about $960,000 with no benefits to support her along the way. Conversely, her salary trajectory puts her on an upward path is almost $7.5 million with full benefits and spending power. Her tax contribution is over 7 times what it would have been without IPP. And in these data on this slide, you can see that if you take a whole cohort of IPP participants over just 10 years, they're estimated to earn an additional 19 million. And the overall 10-year contributions to both city and state taxes is almost $800,000.
So I think Berna's story really highlights why brain waste is such a shame for both the individual and the impact it can have on their life, but also for employers and how much value that immigrants can bring to our local economy. Berna was able to succeed through a combination of both our international professionals program that works specifically with foreign professionals, as well as our partnership with the city of Philadelphia to give foreign professionals like Berna an opportunity to work in the US context in a situation where maybe an employer would be a bit nervous or hesitant, otherwise have a trial 3-month period. And you could see in Berna's example how much both the city was able to flourish with her and also her own career has. I'm curious to hear from other folks if they've seen or heard or have implemented other strategies that they found effective in connecting immigrants with employment and careers.
One of the things that St. Joe's has is a referral bonus. So it's for all employees, but those that are here that are immigrant employees are reaching back out to those that are in their native countries to come over here. Along with the work culture that's here, they feel very positive about referring people to come here, and then they're earning, and we're getting talent pool, and somebody else is coming over here to earn wages. So it's a win-win-win.
That's fantastic. And yeah, I've worked with folks like immigrants who've just been in the US for like 1 or 2 months and have gotten frustrated not being able to find work. And they'll tell me, hey, Andrew, I just talked to my friend in California the other day. I'm going to fly out there in a month because he has a job opportunity for me set up with his employer. So I think incentives like that may seem small to us, but when coupled with just the urgency to meet their financial needs, like immigrants are extremely motivated to just figuring out how are they going to find work, and those can really kind of be the final thing that draws someone to you as an employer.
And we are allowing for I guess, thank you, COVID, I don't know, the virtual interviews. So they can actually conduct their original interview to see if this is really something what they want to do before they even come over.
That's great. Other
Um,
strategies? Go ahead.
I actually have a question. I have come across a lot of nurses or healthcare professionals in different ranges in our ESL program. And one of the things that they are actually looking for, many of them have already, like they have a degree or they're working on their NCLEX. And obviously because of the English barrier that that process usually takes longer. Is there anyone here that knows? Because a lot of them keep asking us, if we know of any program that would like help them with acquiring obviously the English language and hopefully being like in the job training kind of thing, but in the US, because most of them have like training. They have been a health professional for many years, but they feel as though they have to do quote unquote and a special training to work in the US because of the language barriers. So I don't know of any programs like that, but if anybody here knows of anything like that, please share it in the chat or I can put my email down and you guys can email me because that's something that I hear all the time where we're at. I just wanted like to throw that out there.
Thanks, Lisa. And that's definitely a significant challenge, I think, in most places, Philadelphia here as well. There's some training programs that help people become certified nursing assistants or licensed practical nurses, but the options are pretty limited. And I know like CNAs don't pay as well as registered nurses and can be quite a drop down in terms of career for a lot of folks. But just due to the barrier in terms of having to be re-credentialed and having to go back to schooling, especially in the medical industry, it does pose a lot of issues. I think we found the most success with people figuring out how can they translate their careers in the medical industry to something slightly adjacent, just because going back to schooling, the financial and just time cost is often unfeasible for a lot of people.
And a lot with the nurses, they still have to sit for the boards to be
Yes.
board certified. So that's the struggle that we're seeing is we would love to hire many nurses.
Yep.
And they have the education over in another country, but even if you did the educational equivalent, it's still not going to get them board certified and they have to be board certified.
Yep. I think there's some work being done on a national level and state by state level to rework what are the requirements in terms of transferring over degrees or experience from another country to the US just to deal with this exact issue, but no easy answers, unfortunately.
Melanie, I have a question. You said that sitting for the boards is probably the biggest barrier. Is there a reason for that? Is it the language or is it the written English part that they have to sit for that? Like if there were some kind of supports in the community to help them prepare for that, do you think they would be able to sit and pass those exams?
Each of them are different, but from what we've seen, it's making sure that the educational equivalent that was over there does match the requirements prior to them being allowed to take and sit for the boards. And it's sort of like challenging the boards so that you could just sit for them instead of having to retake all of the classes all over again.
Yeah, I worked with one woman who was a registered nurse at I think she was at a emergency hospital, and she was just working as a CNA for multiple years. It took, I think, about a year for her to go through the whole process of getting her degree like evaluated and approved by the board in order for her to take the NCLEX exam to become a registered nurse again. And then at that point, she had to take 8 months of training that was really expensive for her, but that was contextualized around English and test taking and how to pass the NCLEX that was geared towards foreigners. It was a for-profit program. Then she didn't pass. And then there was such limited support systems that exist that she kind of just dropped the whole thing and just continued staying as a certified nursing assistant, because the only option was this that she saw with this paid training that was $6,000 for like a 3-month training. Something else I want to just highlight quickly and note is that a big point of emphasis for us is the need to continue to educate employers around how to integrate, recruit, and retain immigrant talent. So we do have a toolkit available on our website. It's geared towards employers who want to understand better how to access immigrant talent. We're actually reworking this toolkit, and we'll be relaunching a more revised model. It's a few years old now in the coming months. But it's been, I think, really significant for us, the value and need to work side by side with employers and listen and hear their concerns and challenges, and coming with that type of approach as a community organization. Before we go, we want to leave some time for other questions and comments that folks may have. And we'll just quickly plug, as Elizabeth mentioned, while we're based here in Philadelphia, the Welcoming Center is exploring opportunities for expansion, partnering with other community organizations and partners across Pennsylvania, including the Lackawanna area. So if you're interested in exploring that more with us, our contact information is here on the slide. But yeah, want to open the floor if folks have more questions or comments.
I want to thank you both, Andrew and Elizabeth, for your time today, and for the discussion we've had throughout your presentation. It's been wonderful. So I just wanted to say that before we do close, and if anybody had any other thoughts, comments, or questions, please feel free to reach out to Corin here at the foundation or myself, as we're happy to connect you and also work with you in trying to find innovative solutions for this.
And we just want to thank everyone here for the opportunity to present and also learn a little bit from you all. Hopefully we'll get a chance to connect more in the coming months. Lisette, I will reach out to you too to just hear more about some of the challenges you're seeing and how we can support each other in that, in terms of getting folks more access to better careers.
Great. Well, with that, I will give you back 9 minutes of your afternoon. I just want to remind everybody that the last part of our session, our series in workforce barriers is Monday, April 21st at 1:30, and it is how collaborative efforts can address economic mobility in NEPA. And then also, if you have not already received an invitation, consider yourself invited to our next in-person NEPA Thrives meeting, which will be Thursday, May 1st, in person at Benco Dental. And Lizette, if you want to put your email in the chat, I will take that before we close out here, and Corin will reach out to you, as I did make a note for her to reach out to you anyway, but I appreciate it.
And I'll be coming out to the in-person gathering on the 1st. So if anybody wants to reconnect, I'll be there. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out on emails.
Great. Well, thank you guys for your time. And you will be receiving the recording. And I know, Elizabeth, you'll probably send the slides if anybody wants any of them to Corin as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.